Hey guys, welcome to this very special episode of TFL Now. And as always, our man Anton, who is the electric car expert. And today we're in Mexico on the very bottom end of the Baja Peninsula. We are flown here by Audi. But Anton, you noticed that there was a convergence of 3 electric, perhaps 4 electric cars that are happening in the near future. Let's talk about that.
That's right, Roman. Basically what we have is a situation in which after the first wave of electric cars that have come out that are the smaller hatchback kind of Volkswagen Golf class electric cars. We have the Chevy Bolt, we have the Nissan Leaf, and soon to be a replacement of the Nissan Leaf. We have a version from Ford, we have something from Fiat, we have something from Kia. These are front-wheel drive cars with lower range. And now with the Chevy Bolt and so forth, we have cars in that class that will be hitting north of 200 miles of range. However, to compete in the premium car segment, we now have a confluence of several cars that look to be hitting the market as early as the middle of 2018 that all look mysteriously the same.
Yeah.
And these are all-wheel drive cars. They have a distinct crossover / almost SUV type profile. And what I notice is that they are remarkably similar to each other in terms of the concepts that have been put out. And we know that the real world cars that are coming from them are going to look very close to these concepts. So if you look at the length, the height, the width of these cars, the size and battery capacity of these cars, and therefore the range in electric mode, they all look very, very similar. The first car of this batch of cars that were announced was the Audi E-Tron. It was announced in September 2015 and will be made in Brussels, Belgium, starting around the middle of 2018. The second car that was shown was the Mercedes EQ, which was shown at the Paris Auto Show about 2 months ago, or not even a full 2 months ago. And now, more recently here at the LA Auto Show, we're now seeing the Jaguar I-Pace. Sometime down the road, we're also likely to see something from Volvo, which they haven't said almost anything about, but looks like it could maybe be also very, very similar.
Yeah, so we just came from the Los Angeles Auto Show where they showed the I-Pace, and what was remarkable about it was, of course, that it had a 93 kilowatt hour battery.
Yeah, I think it was 90 and the Audi something like 92. Mercedes hasn't said specifically, but they have said that they hope that the range on the US EPA cycle is going to be close enough to 300 miles. That kind of tells us that 90 would be the absolute minimum, probably something closer to 100, still within a rounding error of the other units here.
So how did 3 car companies come to the same automotive conclusion when it came to electric cars? Crossover, same size, all-wheel drive, 2 motors, right? One on the front axle, one on the rear axle. I mean, you would think that there would be some creativity, but they're all kind of targeting, in essence, the Model S, right? It's basically a lifted Model S hatchback.
That is correct. That is exactly right. It's not so much a Model X competitor as it is more of a Model S competitor, because these cars are all going to be 2-row cars, not 3-row, not 7 passengers, not 6 passengers. These are going to be 5-passenger unit cars. Clearly, one reason to explain this is that they are basically targeting the Model S indeed as a competitor, but we've seen a shift in consumer preferences over the last couple of years in which the consumer clearly wants to have a higher ride height and wants this old-fashioned station wagon really, but they want to call it an SUV, they want to call it a crossover. And also when you consider the fact that these cars will be using a different type of battery than Tesla does. You see, Tesla's batteries today have been 65 millimeters high. The batteries that are going to be used in all of these cars are going to be 110 millimeters tall. That makes for a taller floor. So that alone makes for a requirement of the car to be actually a few centimeters higher than it would be in a typical sedan type configuration.
Now, one thing I did not understand was when the I-Pace was revealed, they said in Europe it'll get 500 kilometers on a charge, but in America it'll get 220 miles. And if you do the math, that doesn't make sense, right? It should get a lot more.
Correct.
In
We
America.
have 2 different testing cycles.
The
European testing cycle is very lenient.
Right.
They drive the car essentially at I think it's a constant speed at the 47 or whatever miles per hour. I forget the exact numbers, but the point is that it gives you the most optimistically possible answer as to the possible range. The US EPA cycle is a very realistic cycle. It has a combination of acceleration, deceleration, all sorts of elevations and so forth. So when they say if a car is going to have 220 miles of range, you're probably going to get that as an average. Clearly in the winter when it's cold, ice, and you drive very, very fast on the highway, you're going to get less, whereas in milder conditions and when you're driving in closer to stop and go, you're going to get a lot more. Now, the 220 miles that Jaguar quoted, they said at least 220 miles. If you have a 90 kilowatt hour battery, then must yield something much higher than that, because Chevrolet with the Bolt gets 238 miles off of a 60 kilowatt hour battery. Now granted, that's a front wheel drive only, it's a smaller car, it's a lighter car and all of that, but even adjusting for all of those things, it should yield them far, far higher range. I would estimate at least 265.
Wow, that's considerable. The other thing that was a little off-putting was they said that it's going to take 90 minutes to recharge. You think that's going to change?
I think that is going to change, and the reason for this is as follows, and it's very similar, by the way, to what GM has said about the Chevy Bolt. They're measuring this thing now off of a 50 kilowatt hour DC charger. Those are the ones that are being deployed today. That's the current common charging standard that is being deployed today for DC charging.
What's the Supercharger? What's the Tesla Supercharger?
Well, Tesla Supercharger is a proprietary format.
Right.
There's also DC charging, but they go up to, I think now, 135 kilowatts.
So a lot, more than twice.
It's almost 3 times as much, yeah. Now, by the time these cars hit the road in 2018, all of these, the Audi E-Tron, the Jaguar I-Pace, and the Mercedes EQ and others, the charging network that will be in place at that time, we're going to start seeing probably already in 2017 the 150 kilowatt chargers being deployed. Now these cars most likely will be able to take advantage of that at that time, but in terms of announcing that today, whether it's Audi, Chevrolet, Jaguar or any of the others, they're being very conservative and not over-promising. They're saying, look, we're measuring these charging times based on what is actually there in place today. So they want to under-promise and over-deliver by the time these cars hit the road in 2018.
It seems like in the car wars, between diesel, hybrid, electric, and fuel cell, that electric is clearly winning that race right now. But what do you think is going to happen with the political situation, not just in America, but everywhere, where there seems to be a return to more traditional values, where the flow of technology is probably going the opposite way right now?
Well, I think much of this really it remains to be seen. I mean, we have a situation here where there's a lot of talk and no concrete action in terms of these incentives. So we have monetary incentives. So we have places like Norway and Denmark where you have enormous excise taxes for automobiles that if you buy an all-electric car, there are none. As a result, the electric cars are becoming far cheaper. Now, will there be a change in those incentives in those countries? Time will tell. Now, in the United States, we have other types of incentives. We have this federal $7,500 tax credit. Will that be phased out? Yes, it will be phased out under any circumstance, but will it be phased out quicker than it would otherwise? Well, we'll see when there will be a new government budget that will be proposed sometime after the middle of January. We simply don't know yet whether there will be any change to these laws. The other types of laws that are on the books are the CAFE laws. These are the corporate average fuel economy standards that require essentially an automaker to sell a certain mix of vehicles. So it's the equivalent of if the government told Apple that for every 3 iPhones you have to sell 1 iPad. Or, I mean, it's a burden placed on the manufacturer, not on the consumer. The consumer is not incentivized to do one thing or the other, but the maker of the automobile is heavily incentivized to supply a certain mix of automobiles. So if they have to sell more of a certain type of automobile than there is real consumer demand for it, they have to sell that at an artificially low price, which means that they lose money on those cars. Could there be a change to the CAFE standards? Could they be abolished outright? Again, we will see in as little as a couple of months, but there's plenty of speculation that there could at least be some adjustment to those types of laws.
Do you think that there is enough natural demand in the marketplace for electric cars, or has that demand been satisfied and now it's artificially inflated by the government's subsidies?
Well, clearly, until this moment in time, I mean, subsidies always increase demand for something, and that's an economic axiom. Now, there's so many other moving parts here, because what we're going to see with this new group of electric cars that are coming out, the first one being the Chevrolet Bolt, then we get the Nissan, whatever the replacement of the Nissan Leaf will be called as it comes out.
Nissan 2.0 for now.
Yeah, Nissan Leaf 2.0.
And that comes out in January, right?
Well, we believe they will show it in January.
Yeah.
We believe it will be available maybe toward the September timeframe of next year. But these are so much more attractive than the existing electric cars because they provide simply so much more range without any increase in price. We're going to see the Tesla Model 3 toward the end of 2017. We're going to see other cars coming out, including all of these cars later in 2018. So the product is simply going to become so much more attractive. So therefore, we have many moving parts here. So yes, the subsidies might be reduced or indeed going away over time, but at the same time, the products are also going to become so much more attractive. And don't forget that in the United States, we're also going to be seeing at some point over the next year or so, the building of what we would call the Supercharger equivalent network. This would be the network that would essentially enable long distance travel with shorter charging times. And when that happens, that makes the entire proposition more attractive. So we simply have many moving parts that you can say some of them will decrease demand for electric cars, but some of them should increase the demand for electric cars. And the mix of this, well, we'll see starting in a few months from now.
And of course, the biggest unknown is fuel prices, right? If fuel prices, for whatever reason, spike, then the cost of refueling an electric car becomes much more attractive.
That's right. If fuel prices were to increase now at this point, I mean, as we have seen over the last many years, any predictions with respect to fuel prices have proven wildly off. When people said they were going to go up a lot, they went down. When people thought they were going to stay lower, go lower, they went up. So I don't think the automakers today are making drastic assumptions that they're going to go up a lot. I think most automakers might be making an assumption that they might increase gradually, maybe to the tune of inflation or slightly more. But as I see it right now, I don't think it's the determining factor in the near term. I think that the combination of a change in subsidies and all of these new, far more attractive electric cars will be the chief determinants of the demand, because these electric cars coming, the Audi E-Tron, the Jaguar I-Pace, the Mercedes EQ, and something from Volvo that we'll start to see in about a year or so from now in terms of, it won't be really manufactured until 2019, but this will be enormously attractive pieces of equipment.
Yeah, they're going to redefine perhaps what we consider a nice, premium, luxurious car, right? Because they're going to be sexy.
That's right.
They're going to be fast, they're going to have a long range, and they're going to be expensive, I bet.
Well, the prices, I mean, you could argue here that they will have to set these prices to, I mean, they're going to make, let's say that any of these automakers are planning on making, say, 30,000 a pop, 30,000 each of these during the first full year of maxed out production. They're simply going to have to set the price at which point they will actually sell them. So, I mean, I think we know what the batteries cost. I think we know what it costs to make a car of that general ilk. I think we can kind of tell that because of their overall economies of scale, that these cars are going to be a little bit less expensive than the Tesla Model S, but not dramatically so. They'll be a few thousand less than a Tesla Model S, which today starts in the high 60s. So it would not surprise me if you might see a headline number out of Jaguar, Audi, and so forth that might, for a smaller battery, might look at high 50s, and then with the larger size battery and all the equipment will go well into the 70s and maybe going all the way into the 80s. I think that's the range of those, which is why in the near term the proposition that GM offers with the Chevy Bolt is so attractive right now, because you can buy one today. They started arriving in Chevrolet dealerships in California within 48 hours ago before we were taping this interview. I mean, they're just started delivering them like in the last day or so in California.
So I guess we'll see if we've finally reached the tipping point, right, where electric cars are becoming not electric cars, but just cars like you talked about in our last interview. Guys, thanks for watching, and it's hard. This lifestyle, isn't it? It's living in
sunshine. It beats snow.
Cheers, guys.
Skål, my fan.
Thank you for watching, and see you next time on the Fast Lane Now. Ciao.